On today's episode, we talk where not to run at night, how to get out of a running slump, and drop bags. On the last episode, we spoke with Thomas O'Reilly, who attempted the Crown King Scramble double, and he talked about running at night. Now, we received a question this week that was pertaining to night running, but more in the city, so we're going to answer that question first.
So James Bisbee from Facebook asks, why has the Scottsdale Sonoran Preserve decided to enforce their sunset closing of the preserve at the Gateway Trailhead that had not been enforced since its opening over 6 years ago? They are now threatening to arrest people with a felon charge for trespassing or give them a parking ticket for being in the parking lot once the sun sets. It seems that they haven't taken into consideration that many hikers, runners, tourists, and families who watch the beautiful sunset almost every day take pictures and usually have left the preserve shortly after the sunset.
James, thanks for the great question. Very specific, and it affects quite a few of us here in Phoenix. So our Aravaipa group trail run is actually affected by the nighttime closure of the Mcdowell Sonoran Preserve. For those of you who don't live in Phoenix area or have not been to the Mcdowell Sonoran Preserve, it's a landmass that's comprised of about a third of the area of Scottsdale, Arizona, and it's been preserved, I guess for eternity. I don't know, until they pass a law, but they've essentially set aside this mountain range and a huge area of land in North Scottsdale that has trails for mountain biking, trail running. They put in a lot of work. It's honestly one of the most spectacular areas to run in Phoenix. They have a rule that you can't be on the trails after sunset or before sunrise, and that will actually change throughout the year. So they have a schedule they post every 2 weeks. The time actually changes. And so we can only really utilize that area in the summertime since we start running at 6:30 p.m. on Wednesdays. So James's question specifically asks about the enforcement of those rules, as well as, what's the penalty for that? Is it a felon charge? I think a lot of runners are uninformed since the rules do differ from places like South Mountain and Phoenix Mountains Preserve, where you can be out on the trails after dark. So I actually approached the city of Scottsdale directly. So I sent an email to Liz Hildenbrand, who's the manager of the Scottsdale's Mcdowell Sonoran Preserve and also Pinnacle Peak. And she did respond back almost immediately. So thank you to Liz for answering our question today. So I'm just going to kind of run down what she says. Essentially, that the reason for doing it is that the desert wildlife is much less impacted by human use for that time period. So, number one, this is a preserve, and Scottsdale wants to preserve that land while still opening up opportunities for us as recreationists to be able to use the land. But at night, we kind of want to return that land back to the wildlife and back to its most natural setting. So that's something that they've decided that that's the best use for the land, and they're asking us to respect that. So if you're unsure on the hours, just don't be out there after dark is the number one thing. So she also follows up, if a person is in the preserve after the gate shuts or after the posted hours on the website, you're technically trespassing, and that is a violation of city ordinance, and you can be cited. It can be as high as a Class 2 misdemeanor. I don't believe that's as bad as a felony, but just so everyone knows, enjoy the preserve, but follow those hours if you can. If you want to get out there and do some night running, there's plenty of other options in the area.
Aaron Berger from Facebook asks, how do you balance preserving wildlife and nature and staying on trail versus going off on your own and exploring? And as a follow-up, he asks, what is the etiquette for relieving yourself off trail? Again, being mindful of the area and staying away from water sources, etc.
Well, that's a great related question, Aaron. So When it comes to respecting wildlife, I think that's a huge part of trail running and being out in nature and in the woods. And I think a lot of the like an on-trail, off-trail type of debate, it really depends where you're at and what land you're on. So if you're in Scottsdale's Mcdowell Sonoran Preserve, you're not allowed to go off trail, so you need to stick to the trails. If you are in the national forest or on BLM lands, I think there's a lot less rules. And just even with the proliferation of sports such as geocaching, where people are off, following a GPS route, trying to find a cache, they're actually allowed to do that as well. So I think you just need to pay attention to where you're at and what the local rules are for the area that you're running in. For myself personally, even when I'm training for a race like Barkley, I'm mostly trying to stick to the trails, just out of respect for the land. If we're all out tromping around, we're going to start to diminish that land that we're on. I found that I can still find enough vertical even on maintained trails. And that kind of brings us to our next point about relieving ourselves. Obviously, not every preserve has restrooms exactly where you need them out on the trails. So for this, I would go back to, I guess, my Boy Scout days and kind of use the general rule of thumb of, not, I guess, using the restroom near a stream or a water source. If you do need to relieve yourself, number two, I don't know how you want to say it, but digging a hole is not always feasible. Yeah, dig a hole if you can. That's the proper way to do things, even if it's with a rock, a little caveman style. And I know a lot of runners will carry a little bit of TP with them. I would say if you're following a leave no trace principle, you should probably pack that out with you. But if you bury it 6 inches in the ground, I think you're probably following some pretty decent rules on that.
So here's an awesome question from Tracy Lynn, also on Facebook. She asked, do you ever fall into slumps where you just don't want to run? If so, what do you do about it? She says, nothing is inspiring me to get out on the trails lately. For a while, it was my jam. Each and every day, I would count down the hours and minutes until I could get out there. But lately, I've fallen into this mood where I just don't feel like it, and I hate it. I really want to go out there, but I just don't. Help.
I think we've all struggled with motivation when it comes to training. And I think for me, kind of looking at maybe what else is going on in my life right at that moment could provide some clues as to what's going on. Did you just complete a big race, a goal race? Are there other focuses in your life that are more important right now that makes it difficult to get out there? Are you not having fun anymore? Are you in what kind of slump are you in? Try and maybe take a little bit of a step back and examine, why you don't have that motivation. I've definitely been there before. And I think whenever I've had issues, it's always because there's something else going on that's taking my attention away from running. I think that to try and get out of that slump, if you're really motivated and want to get back out there, try signing up for a race and have that goal and motivation to get back out there every day. Having a goal can start to jumpstart your motivation to get back out there. And a lot of times you can forget just how nice it is to get out for a run and how much better you actually feel. Sometimes signing up for a race can be a catalyst to get you back out there when you've been in a bit of a slump. And once you actually do get out there and use that little bit of a kick in the pants to get out there, you realize again, oh, this is really nice. I feel so much better. I've gotten out there. I just, ran across a beautiful trail. I saw a sunset. I saw an owl fly past. Like, that's kind of the things that I enjoy most about running is, reconnecting with nature, with the mountains. And I think if you have that little extra push, you can get over that hump and you can get back after it. I think mixing up your routine is also another great way to do it. If you're just running out on the roads or you're running the same trail every day, it can get a little bit old and stale. So mix it up, find that adventurous spirit again, seek out a really cool place that you've never been to and go explore. Grab a map, grab a friend, and don't even bring your watch. Just go out there, hit the trails, explore. And I think that that can help kind of rekindle or reignite your passion.
So from Facebook, Jimmy Dwyer asks, thinking of signing up for Across the Year's 24-hour, but have fallen off the training wagon. Is 8 months even time to put up a respectable distance? Respectable to me would be 50 plus miles.
So again, falling off the wagon, getting back on, I think an 8-month time period is absolutely plenty of time to reach a goal for almost any race. In reality, you probably just want about a 4 to 5 month training program leading up to a goal race. So you could use this 3 months right now where you don't really need specific training for something like Across the Years, where you can, again, just get out there and try something new. If you've never run in the Mcdowell Sonoran Preserve, go check it out. Run up Bell Pass, run over to Wingate. You don't need to be putting in those flat miles right now. Go do something new, hike up a mountain, kind of rekindle that passion again. I think that's the most important thing. And then as you transition, getting closer to your goal race, you can focus more on your specificity of training for a race like Across the Years, which is mostly flat and on a very hard packed surface. You're going to want to put in a lot of road miles or flat miles on the canal, just so your body is used to that sort of pounding. But for now, hit the trails and get over that slump. That's really the best advice I would give.
From Facebook, we also have Caroline Gonzalez, who asks, what advice would you give runners just getting into trail running?
My advice would be just to get out there and don't be too intimidated by a mountain or a trail, and don't be afraid to walk. I think a lot of runners have this idea in their mind, especially coming off the roads, that they have to keep a certain pace and they get a little bit self-conscious about their pace. They look down, they see, oh my God, I'm maintaining an 11-minute mile and I'm used to running 9-minute miles on the road. I'm so slow, I shouldn't be out here. Just erase that from your mind. Again, don't even take your watch. Just go out, pick a route, and just focus on accomplishing that route or that trail. Go to South Mountain and say, I'm gonna go up the Mormon Trail until I hit National, and that's what I'm gonna do, or whatever your local route might be. But don't bring a watch and just go out there and run when you feel like it. And if it gets hard, just hike for a while and look around. And I think that's the beauty of trail running, is it's just connecting with the outdoors. And I can't stress enough how really unimportant the pace is, especially for someone who's brand new to trail running. And I think a lot of us more experienced ultra runner and trail runners know it's not all just running. It's just moving. It's putting one foot in front of the other and getting there. And it's more about the journey than I think the destination. It's a cliche thing to say. Other advice for, I guess, trail runners is bring a map or look at a map, know where you're going. You'll have a much better experience if you're not lost. Bring water and food. You're probably going to be out there longer than a road run, and it's always nice when you're not thirsty and starving. So I would say, use a little bit more planning and preparation so that you can have, a safe, enjoyable experience out on the trails just by doing a few things ahead of time. Another great way for beginners to get involved is to join a local trail running group. Here in the Phoenix area, we have the Aravaipa group trail run every Wednesday at 6:30. We have, a fun group that does 3 to 3.5 miles in 1 hour, which is a pace that most people can maintain. Plenty of breaks and people to meet and help guide you out there. So, look up and see if there's any local meetup groups where you're living at.
Deborah Bliss Hamberlin says, I've always trained based upon weekly distant goals. Then asks, when training for an ultra, should I instead focus on weekly elevation gain and loss goals?
So for those of you who are, a little bit more advanced and training for races, this is really a great question. Should I focus my training on miles, elevation gain loss, just straight up time on the trails? What I personally like to do is a lot of times I'll base my training off of time. So it doesn't really matter the distance, and the elevation gain sometimes matters, just depends again on the race. If I'm training for the Barkley Marathons, I do have weekly elevation gain and loss targets that I'm trying to hit. So I really want to focus on the elevation. That's way more important than, say, the distance or the time. I think Deb is training for Leadville this summer, so I would say you definitely want to be hitting those elevation gain numbers, but I don't know if you need to focus on that on a per run or per day basis, but more look at that on a weekly basis. Are you hitting 8, 10, 12,000 feet of vertical gain per week? The Leadville 100, for those of you who don't know, is a race up in Colorado in the Rocky Mountains. It runs beneath several 14ers, and it does climb up to 12,600 feet. Are going to want to get a significant amount of elevation gain to prepare yourself for a race like that. I wouldn't necessarily focus on hitting those distance numbers. I think that can be a dangerous way to train, just because you're focused on hitting a certain number, 50 miles a week, and I think that's not really the point. Is hitting a certain number that's not necessarily going to improve your running, but looking at a certain just amount of volume or time, looking at those metrics at the end of a week in a summary is a good way to track your progress, but I wouldn't hyper focus or be obsessed with that number or that mileage.
Another question from Skylar Hall of Facebook asks about drop bags. He asks, how do you plan to throw particular items for certain locations? Just throw in the kitchen sink in each one as a safety valve, or do you reduce the load for faster sorting and be more strategic for certain areas on course?
So we got actually several questions relating to drop bags this week. We might do an entire episode just on drop bags. Maybe I'll bring what I usually pack out and kind of show you exactly what I do, what kind of bag that I use. I think that would be a great episode, and we can pull in your more specific questions. We actually get a lot of questions coming in just on our end for organizing events. People are asking if we provide drop bags, like the actual physical bag, what to pack, where are these locations. And I think generally you need to really look at the race, number one, and see what is the course layout, and then ask yourself, do I have a crew? It really goes more to a broader strategic planning for a race, which if you have a goal for a particular race, you want to make sure that you do have a plan and that you involve your crew and anyone else that's supporting you. I think a lot of times we're so hyper focused on our training and learning the course that we sometimes forget that there actually does need to be some planning ahead of time for our actual race day. And so as far as what I pack in drop bags, for something like a 50K race, a lot of times I don't even pack a drop bag. If I were to, it would probably just be some extra nutrition that I didn't want to carry for the entire race. So things like shot blocks or maybe a mashed potato burrito, something like that, I only want to carry half my supplies up to mile 15, then I can restock, and then I can go to the finish line. I like to be a self-sufficient runner a lot of times, and I've just hit a point where I'm more experienced and I know that I can get through a 50K or even a 50 miler with minimal supplies or just relying upon aid stations. So a lot of times I don't pack a lot into my drop bags. For someone who's newer or new to the scene and might have, more blister problems, you might want to pack some extra supplies just in case something goes wrong. So a change of socks, maybe you want to switch shoes, and especially if you don't have a crew, the drop bags are going to become a lot more important. If you have a crew meeting you, they can essentially take all of these items with them to various points along the course. When I pack a drop bag, you also want to think about lighting. When is it going to get dark? And think about worst case scenario. The last thing you want is to drop from a race because your light is 10 miles further down the course than you expected because something happened and you still want to finish the race, but you just don't have a light. So a lot of times I will do that worst case scenario, extra headlamp that just goes to an aid station, or an extra layer, extra rain jacket, pair of gloves, just in case, spend all this money traveling to a race, training for a race, focusing mentally on it, that it's a shame that a little bit of planning and preparation that could prevent that sort of a DNF wasn't thought about ahead of time. So I think that we will address the drop bag issue further. We might even do it in the next episode and actually bring out some examples. I think it'd be kind of fun we have a whole stack of drop bags just sitting in our warehouse here. We might pull some of those out and just take a look at what people packed. I don't know if that's violating, but it sounds like it could be fun. Anonymous.
So here's a good question from Holly Hobbyist from Facebook and asks, what do you recommend for staying awake during a 100-miler?
Number one, I recommend getting a lot of sleep ahead of time. I'm notoriously terrible at this. I almost always go into races sleep deprived, and for all 4 of my 100-milers last year, I actually slept during the race. Not a very good thing to be doing when you're trying to finish these things up. So things that can help you stay awake at night. Number one, a bright headlamp. You'd be amazed at the difference that more light can do for you. I mean, we all know what happens when that sun comes up in the morning after being up all night. Well, maybe not all of us know that, but I do know that gives you just such a mental boost. So if you can create that artificial light, something really bright, 500 lumen flashlight or headlamp, it can really just help keep you awake out there. Caffeine can definitely be used. It just kind of depends your sensitivity to it, and have you been using it a lot lately? A lot of times I will go off caffeine for 2 to 4 weeks before a big race so that it's more effective for me. I think also music can be used as a way to stay awake and keep your mind entertained and going. I think also having someone to chat with, having a pacer out there with you at night can definitely be a good thing that can help keep you awake and keep you on target. My biggest fail of sleeping out in a race was at Barkley when I was by myself. I was going to just set a watch timer for 10 minutes, I kind of crash out, wake up 45 minutes later, and then I just couldn't get out of that mental fog, and I just kept stumble forward for 10 minutes and just crash again until I eventually slept through the entire night. So I think having someone else out there when it's allowable is a really great way to help keep yourself awake. But the biggest thing is just getting that sleep ahead of time. Thank you guys for all the fantastic questions this week. I think we posted just last night to our Aravaipa group trail run page about soliciting questions. We got over 33 comments, so we really thank you guys for all of the great questions. We're sorry we couldn't get to all of them today, but we are going to save your questions from this week. We might do a follow-up show even later this week to get to more of those. And just a reminder that you can also ask your questions at any point in time on Twitter or Instagram using the hashtag AskTrail. We're also on Snapchat, Aravaipa Running. You guys send us your video questions. We would love to get a video question. We will put you on the show. We'll play your video on the show. So I don't know. We should do some sort of a prize for the first person that sends us a Snapchat video. We put you on the show. So send us more of your questions and we'll keep on answering them for you. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next episode.